Bethlehem was nearly 80% Christian a century ago. Today, that ancient community is almost gone, and the reason isn't the story most people have been told. Right now, this matters because the conflict in Palestine is constantly framed in ways that erase entire communities. You'll often hear it described as a religious struggle between Jews and Muslims, but that framing leaves out a crucial truth. For centuries, there has been another people rooted in the same land, Palestinian Christians. Families who lived in Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, and the surrounding towns for generations, some tracing their heritage back nearly 2,000 years to the earliest followers of Jesus Christ. Their story reveals something deeper about power, displacement, and the rewriting of history. To understand what happened, you have to go back to 1948. During the war that accompanied the creation of Israel, around 700,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes in what Palestinians call the Nakba, the catastrophe. And this mass displacement did not only affect Muslims. Palestinian Christians were driven out alongside them. Entire communities disappeared. Two of the most well-known examples were the Christian villages of Ikrit and Kafr Bir'im in the Galilee. Residents were ordered to leave during the fighting by Israeli forces and were told they could return once the war ended. But the promise was never honored. In fact, in 1951, Israel's own Supreme Court ruled that the villagers had the legal right to return. Yet before they could go back, the villages were demolished. Homes were destroyed, communities erased. Today, only churches and cemeteries remain, and descendants still gather there for prayer among the ruins of their ancestral homeland. But the pressure on Palestinian Christians didn't end with the Nakba. After the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel occupied the West Bank, including Bethlehem, the town where Jesus was born. A century ago, Bethlehem was overwhelmingly Christian. Today, Christians make up only a small minority. Palestinian church leaders repeatedly point to the same forces pushing families to leave: military checkpoints, land confiscations, settlement expansion, economic hardship, and severe restrictions on movement, including access to Jerusalem's holy sites. Over time, these pressures slowly reshaped the city's demographics. Some critics try to argue that the disappearance of Christians from parts of the Middle East is mainly the result of tension with Muslim communities. But when historians examine Palestinian society, they consistently find something different. For generations, Muslim and Christian Palestinians lived side by side, sharing communities, businesses, and political movements. In fact, some of the most prominent Palestinian leaders were themselves Christian, including George Habash and Hanan Ashrawi. The decline of Christian communities in places like Bethlehem is overwhelmingly tied to displacement, occupation, and economic pressure, not sectarian conflict. This is also why many Palestinian Christian theologians have become outspoken critics of Christian Zionism. Leaders behind the Kairos Palestine Declaration argue that using biblical prophecy to justify modern political domination contradicts the moral teachings of Christianity itself. For many clergy in the Holy Land, faith demands standing against injustice, displacement, and the destruction of human dignity. And that brings us to the deeper question. If Christianity was born in this land, why is the story of its indigenous Christian community almost invisible in global conversations about Palestine? Why do millions of Christians around the world know Bethlehem as a symbol of faith, yet know so little about the people who have lived there for centuries? If the birthplace of Christianity continues losing its native Christian population, what does that say about the future of the Holy Land and about the narratives many of us have been taught? I want to hear your thoughts. Why do you think the story of Palestinian Christians is so rarely discussed? And what responsibility do Christians around the world have when it comes to justice in Palestine? Because this story isn't just about history, it's about power, memory, and whose voices the world chooses to hear.